Evening, Razorcade, Fake News 85. The hyperscaler ledger fractures. Epoch AI confirms infrastructure spending outruns cash flow, forcing capital elsewheres. Amazon, Nvidia, and AMD inject $310 million into Odyssey ML, pitting to 3D simulation. The validation apparatus collapses. In Respawn.
Top story, venture liquidity. Epoch AI confirms hyperscaler infrastructure spending grows 70% annually, but cash flow only 23%. That divergence guarantees external funding by Q3 to sustain build-out. You know, we treated data centers like utility grids, ignoring they run on speculative debt and quarterly power points. The burn rate consumes the roadmap, and the only thing scaling faster than rack density is the deficit. Yeah.
This compression forces a strategic retreat from open research toward closed, monetized products. Independent operators will lose access to early CPAs to enterprise contracts that guarantee immediate revenue. You know, the researchers finally proved you cannot sustain a moonshot economy by printing money and hoping alignment solves itself. The ecosystem.
Story 2. Amazon, Nvidia, and AMD have jointly invested $310 million into Odyssey ML, an artificial intelligence startup focused exclusively on three-dimensional world modeling. The transaction signals a coordinated pivot away from language generation, reasoning, and physical simulation. Capital markets are pricing geometric accuracy higher than textual coherence, treating environment rendering as the next primary compute bottleneck.
This vertical integration accelerates the migration of compute budgets from chat interfaces to physics engines. Engineering pipelines will prioritize spatial transformers over autoregressive text decoders, forcing hardware vendors to redesign tensor cores for volumetric data. You know, the industry spent billions training models who rely on independent collision detection, only to discover the real breakthrough was teaching one to navigate a room without clipping through the furniture. Yeah.
Story 3. A Microsoft researcher has constructed a fully functional neural network using the game mechanics of Age of Empires 2, replacing traditional mathematical weights with herds of virtual goats. The simulation demonstrates that the underlying optimization mathematics function identically, regardless of the semantic layer, exposing anthropomorphic bias in over 300 recent AI publications. You completely forgetting the entire structure can be replicated by a peasant unit gathering berries in a slightly aggressive ramp.
This methodological critique forces a complete restructuring of academic validation frameworks. Peer review committees will eventually mandate semantic agnostic testing to verify that performance gains originate from architectural improvements rather than narrative framing. Independent operators will deploy randomized entity simulations to audit published architectures before allocating compute resources. Researchers finally proved you do not need a corporate data center to validate a breakthrough. You just need a better spreadsheet and a virtual animal that does not unionize. Sure.
Home Lab. Independent operators have demonstrated that a local 30 billion parameter agent can autonomously compile a fully ray-traced first-person shooter written entirely in pure C code. The agent utilizes headless screenshot loops for environmental feedback and executing the entire development cycle on consumer hardware. You know, we spent years training models to summarize emails, only to find the real breakthrough was teaching one to render a polygon without hallucinating a missing vertex.
Consumer configuration should prioritize fast system memory and aggressive context window management to sustain the visual feedback chains during extended compilation sessions, decoupling from proprietary development environments while waiting for privacy-sensitive creative pipelines. You know, the researchers proved you do not need a corporate license to build a game engine, just a better compiler and a graphics card that does not throttle. The cloud was just someone else's computer charging rent while the local stack consolidates the workflow.
Speculation time. Researchers have published Gaussian Mixture Attention, a probabilistic routing mechanism that would predict mixture key components to achieve linear time summer scaling, enabling context windows to expand without exponential hardware investment. We spent years accepting quadratic complexity as a law of nature, completely ignoring the entire constraint was just a mathematical courtesy extended by early researchers. Indeed.
My prediction. Within 12 months, linear time routing will become the default inference standard, rendering current attention mechanisms obsolete and forcing a complete redesign of enterprise hardware. Misapplied will eventually classify quadratic attention as an inefficient computational legacy. Mandating probabilistic independence is not physics off solar. It is letting your inference cluster data skip the unnecessary math. The prediction sets, the routing linearizes, and the context expands.
That is your lot. I'm Razorcade. Epoch AI confirms hyperscaler cash flow is fracturing, forcing capital elsewhere. Amazon, Nvidia, and AMD consolidate spatial models, pivoting from language to geometry. The GOAT network computes, exposing anthropomorphic bias in academic validation. The Leckel agents, Jensen